Welcome everyone to Monday Match Analysis. I'm Gill. Loaded show for you today. At the very end, we'll take a quick peek at the draws next week at the Queen's Club in London and Halle. And then before that, we'll do our top 5 for this week's show, which will be the top 5 players most excited to see the grass. They're saying hallelujah because there's green under their feet instead of red. And then before that, I'm not sure where this discussion is going to go. I'm not sure how long it's going to take. But as you can see, I've made a slight adjustment to my studio here. The Federer hat, the Nadal hat, together in solidarity like they're best friends. Basically, I just kind of want to talk about the relationship between Federer fans and Nadal fans. Some of the things I'm seeing basically in the comments of my videos. And then also some of the criticism that I've received, I'd say at the tail end of last week. Just want to respond to it. I wish I was strong enough to ignore it, but I'm just going to use the platform and I'm going to defend it. But first, some matters to deal with. Roger Federer, his return to Stuttgart, beating Milos Raonic in the final in straight sets. This elusive Stuttgart title that somehow he couldn't win, but he's finally won it. And we'll talk about his return and how he looked. Starting with our thumbnail, it's Monday Match Analysis. Look at the bends. Roger Federer definitely has way better benzes in his driveway. So, you know, it's cool that he gets the bends, but he's definitely not going to drive that one. He's got nicer ones for sure. I'm pretty sure I'm pretty sure Mercedes sponsors Roger Federer. I feel like I've seen him in some Mercedes commercials. Maybe I'm crazy. But yeah, he's definitely got some nicer ones regardless of the sponsorship. Okay. So, grass court tennis, folks. More often than not, the margins are slimmer. There are less breaks of serve. There are less breakpoint opportunities. Therefore, it's easier to pinpoint like a few points that swung the match, a few points that were really, really important when it comes to how the outcome of the match was decided. Which is kind of nice for my purposes because I'm able to go back and look at those points and see what happened. So, in this case, on two of the 3 biggest points of the match, Roger Federer is going to come up with some spectacular shots, some of his best shots of the match against Milos Raonic. So first, we're going to take a look at the break point, the only break point Roger Federer needed for the entire match. Yeah, it's the only one he got, and it's the only one he needed. So Milos Raonic, he's going to hit a flat serve down the tee. Roger Federer, stretched out here, somehow gets his racket head behind the ball, which is key. More on that in a second. He's able to hit it inside out, and it is a backhand return winner. Raonic thought he hit such a good first serve that he actually took a step in. So it wasn't really a serve and volley. It was a serve and read, where sometimes you'll say in your head, if I strike this serve perfect, then I'll go in. So you lose a half second. You're a little bit later coming to the net, but you have that in your mind sometimes where you hit a really good serve and then you decide to come in. I call it like a serve and read. But this was an awesome backhand return, obviously. This doesn't really do it justice. Watch it in real time. Plus, the sound that it made coming off of Federer's racket was like such a crisp, solid sound. So I loved this shot. But I think that throughout the week, a lot of players were hitting first serves at Roger Federer's backhand because sometimes I feel like Federer he returns in a forehand grip and then the serve goes to his backhand and he kind of just takes a stab at it. Not the second serve return, but the first serve return. Sometimes he just takes a stab at it. And I don't think, and look, it's hard when you got a guy like Kyrgios especially, who has a serve that's pretty hard to time, pretty hard to read, and has a lot of velocity. But especially against Kyrgios, there were a lot of serves that Federer just sort of, I don't know really how else to put it. He kind of just continental grip, or honestly really his forehand grip, and he kind of just takes a stab at it and floats it back. It's obviously not a very effective return. Against Raonic, I feel like he did a way better job, Federer did, of getting his racket head behind the ball and hitting through a backhand return like he did here. All in all, before I go to the next point, Federer played his best match on Sunday against Raonic, and that's really what you're looking for. For a guy who's coming back, for a guy who's warming up to do bigger things, at a major in 3 weeks, I think that what you look for is you look for improvement over the course of the week, and I think we definitely saw that for Federer, especially like on his forehand side. It was tough, the first match, to play Misha Zverev on a slippery grass court. That's tough. He probably looked the worst in that match, and he looked better and better as the week went on. He did a good job with Kyrgios, and he did the best job with Raonic. So I'd say very positive week for Federer, and he said it himself. Here's the next game, actually. And this is going to be the only 2 break points Raonic has in the entire match. It's Federer serving at 2-1 in this first set, so right away, Raonic has a great response. We pick it up. We pick things off here. Pick it up. We pick things up here on Raonic's forehand return. He's going to hit a tremendous forehand return on break point. Federer is picking this up right off the ground. The return was right at your feet. That's exactly what you want if you're Milos Raonic. But this is also something that Roger Federer does better than anyone else, and that is I almost hesitate to call it a half volley, because technically a half volley in more generic terms is you're at the net and the ball bounces at your feet and you don't really take a full swing at it. It's actually a volley. But Federer is at the baseline, obviously takes a full swing at the ball, a short swing albeit, but a full swing, and basically picks it up right off the ground. And the pace that Federer is able to get on that shot is unparalleled by anyone on tour. It's so unique to Roger Federer that he's able to stand on the baseline and pick balls off the ground, take full swings at them, and get pace on it. In this one, it's a little bit more defensive, so he doesn't get like tons of pace on it, but still, instead of really floating it back, and I genuinely think that most players on tour would not take a swing at this at all, where Federer did take a full swing at this, I think a lot of players would just block it back. Federer takes a full swing and gets enough on it to at least force Raonic, instead of like an easy approach put away, he forces Raonic into a chip and charge, and I got to give Raonic credit. Take a look at this. Look how low the ball is. That means Raonic did a pretty good job. Federer is taking this ball really like 6 inches off the ground, and Raonic is in pretty good position. He's pretty close to the net. He could be a little closer, but it could also be way worse. But Roger Federer, it seemed that he hit like 5 for 5 on forehand passes in this match. Anytime Raonic approached his forehand, it was game over. This was the first one, and what a huge passing shot by Federer. Couldn't have placed it much more perfectly than that. And he saves the next break point on a really nice slice that drew what I would consider to be a forced error on Raonic's forehand. So Federer got away and held for the rest of the set, won that first set. Second set, they rode it out to a tiebreak, and once again, a huge Roger Federer forehand pass was what really sealed the deal in that tiebreak. That and a Milos Raonic double fault. So that was the deal with that. I think I've said everything that needs to be said about Federer in Stuttgart. And now I want to kind of go to the comment section. I was going to do like a full-out traditional comment response, the kind of thing that I like to do from time to time. But I'll tell you what, there were tons of comments. They were, some of them were completely contradictory of one another. People were not agreeing. People were arguing about Federer and Nadal. And I would say it was not a comment section that I really enjoyed reading. I do have one comment that I picked out as a comment that I actually thought was kind of worth going back at because, yeah, I just thought it was well written, and it was something that I did not talk about last week after the final. Caleb Pereira says, I like your point about Nadal's backhand being more decisive than Thiem's. It's one of the most underrated shots in the sport. I would agree. Though I disagree with you on the point of him not being able to hit an effective backhand from 2+ meters behind the baseline. He pulverized a few cross-court into Thiem's forehand corner, and that did change the outcome of the point. So on that point, I would say you said that you don't agree with I don't think I ever said it's not effective. I'd say it's not offensive. When Nadal is 5 feet behind the baseline, I don't think it's a very offensive shot. I'd say when he's able to step in, get on top of it, take it on the rise, and hit it with a closed stance, that's when he can be offensive with the shot a lot more easily. Although, when you're out of position, he does have a lot of strength on his open stance backhand to hit it cross court. That's true. But for the most part, when it comes to dictating a rally, you want to be stepping in when you're looking at Nadal's backhand. He wants to be in, have aggressive court position, whereas his forehand, it doesn't really matter. My main area of interest is, what do you think about teams' unwillingness to suffer as much as Nadal? That's becoming clearer year by year. Instead of trading 80% shots on the baseline, which he's well capable of, he's as strong as fast as Nadal physically. Maybe the high backhand will always be a problem, but still. Team's mentality seems to be one of hitting the ball way too hard to escape the grind, leading to lots of overhits. You could see that in the 10th game of the first set, and last year for the most part of the last 2 sets. My idea is that if he's unwilling to suffer a bit more, he can overpower Nadal, as unlikely as that sounds, for sufficient periods of the match, as he's the younger, less worn out of the two. That could translate into a 4 or 5 setter. I have 2 points here. First of all, in the 10th game, which, if you'll recall, it was 4-5 Dominic Thiem serving, I really do think that it was more of him making a terrible backhand volley and not being able to get it out of his head. So I do think that, I don't know if it was willingness to suffer, but it did, obviously, the mental game came into play there, and he just played a horrendous game. But I will say, after that point in the match, there was a lot of overhitting by Dominic Thiem, and I do think that it was partially because there was a lack of belief. I think he was distracted in the beginning of the second set, which was such an important time of the match, and he started overhitting at that point. I think somewhat out of frustration, somewhat out of thinking about the end of the first set, out of lack of focus. With that being said, Thiem does not have the same willingness to suffer that Nadal has. I think it's important to recognize that really nobody can suffer as well as Nadal does. It's a huge point of emphasis in Spain, the way they train their players. There is a huge emphasis. Sergi Buguera, Pato Alvarez, some of the bigger coaches in Spain that develop these players, some of their biggest philosophies are, you need to learn how to suffer on the tennis court. And Nadal does it better than anyone in the history of the sport. So if you're looking at basically Thiem's ability to suffer compared to Nadal's, that's almost an unfair matchup for Dominic Thiem, because nobody's as good as Nadal. At the same time, we've been fortunate to see guys like Djokovic. While I'm not sure he can do it right now, Djokovic has been able to grind it out with Nadal. Murray has been able to grind it out with Nadal. And Federer hasn't had to, because I've barely seen Federer get tired on the tennis court. So suffering is not a necessary skill for Roger Federer, because I'm not sure I've ever seen him suffer out there. Which, by the way, is mostly, I wouldn't say due to his raw fitness, probably more so his efficiency in movement and energy, which is why Federer doesn't really get tired, which is incredible. But I wouldn't even say Thiem is on the level of Murray and Djokovic with his willingness to suffer. It's a fair point. I think a lot of the next-gen players, I know Thiem's not next-gen, he's 26, he's not even young. I think a lot of the young players that are not basically the big four I don't think they're at the same level in terms of grinding and shot tolerance and willingness to suffer as Murray, Djokovic, Nadal. I don't think any of them are there. Thiem's certainly not there. So this was a good point. I wanted to show that comment because that was a good comment. But the rest, just I didn't know what to choose. It was just overwhelming. So I'm like, you know what? Instead of going comment by comment, Let me just sort of open up the discussion a little bit. And I know it's weird to call it a discussion when it's just me, but I do have a lot of thoughts on some of the things I've been reading. This was the top comment last week. It said, "My God, Gill, at least you could have appreciated and duly mentioned in your awards the ultimate achievement in the sport, La Undecima by Rafa. We may not see this ever being repeated as long as the sport is played. Also, mind you and hope that the story still continues." Fair comment, and I replied to the comment, and first I made a joke, and then I said, I kind of agree. There was probably, I should have taken more time in that video just to stop and congratulate Nadal and recognize, I don't even think I said, I just didn't mention it, that it was his 11th Roland Garros title, and that's my bad. I do need to kind of just stop and kind of go over the historical significance of what Nadal had done. At the same time, with the Steve Flink interview and in last week's show, I did sort of mention what's sort of difficult for me, which is something that's difficult for me, which is making it interesting to talk about Nadal's dominance. Now, you can't misconstrue that and think that that's me saying watching Nadal win is boring, because I got comments that literally said, "Hey Gill, watching Nadal win, like, how could you say it's boring?" I didn't say it's boring. I said it might be boring for me to talk about it. Like, for me to just say, "Oh God, team had no chance because Nadal was amazing, because his forehand's amazing and his fitness is amazing and his defense is amazing and he can transition to offense and his court position is so good and his backhand was great and his his second serve was really good." I'm just saying that might not be very interesting, or at least to me. We know how great Nadal is, and over the clay court season, I went over a lot of the aspects of Nadal's game and how great it was. If you would recall, just for a second. And this is sort of me defending myself. I wish that I was sort of strong enough to just ignore it and not defend myself. But I have to, or I don't have to, but I want to, because it does bother me when Nadal fans think I'm impartial. And by the way, I also kind of want to say this, or think I'm partial. I want to say this also. I've had Nadal fans say, like, "Hey, like, I don't think you're biased against Nadal." I've had Nadal fans, I had one guy say that he was even, like, annoyed with all the Nadal fans ripping on me. But I also sort of experienced this at the end of last year's US Open with Nadal fans upset with me. Anyway, I just kind of want to set the record straight here. After Nadal won in the Davis Cup match against Zverev, I said I was so impressed with that match that I was utterly convinced that Nadal was going to tear through the entire clay court season. I thought he played so well in that match against Sasha Zverev. And then I did deep analysis on Rafa's positioning, how great Rafa's positioning is on clay. Then, fast forward 2 weeks, and I talk about Nadal winning Monte Carlo, and I talk about how good his backhand looks. His backhand looked great for the entire clay court season. In fact, when Nadal was struggling, it wasn't his backhand, it was his forehand, which is technically his better shot. Isn't that sort of interesting? So the backhand was the solid rock for Nadal for the entire clay court season. It never really faltered, and at times, it was even a weapon. So after Monte Carlo, I talk about Nadal's backhand and how great that was. And then he loses Madrid. Then after Rome, I talk about the adjustment that he made against Djokovic, taking his backhand down the line early in rallies. And I also defended him against the people who were saying that he only won against Zverev because of the rain delay. So I think that for the entire clay court season, I did focus on the things that Nadal was doing really, really well. But by the time the French Open started, it was just like, look, Nadal's clearly going to get to the final. He's clearly not going to be challenged in the final. And then it was such a blowout. That last match was such a blowout. And this is me. This is me. All I want are good matches. I just want good matches. I just want close matches. And that is why, if I say, I think that the most interesting part of the French was Djokovic's quarterfinal match against Cecchinato, or, Zverev's 5-setters leading up to the team match. It's just about close matches here. I'm just a tennis fan like you who wants close matches. It's not Nadal's fault. That should go without saying, right? I mean, it's Team's fault, if anything. But then some people said, why are you berating Team? Team was never going to win. Rafa's too good. Okay, I agree that Team wasn't going to win. I didn't pick Team to win. I just thought it would be close. And even in the beginning of the clay court season, I said that people think that it's way too close between Team and Nadal. It's not even close. I guess Team's performance in Madrid, I kind of fell for it again. But it wasn't just that. I thought Team was just playing better tennis than he had last year. I thought he was a different player than he was last year. But the point is, I need to find an angle. And then my angle for Monday Match analysis last week was, well, where's the gap? Where are the places that Nadal is better than Team? And what can what can Team do? What parts of his games, of Team's game, would need to get better in order for him to beat Nadal? That's all. So I don't get the I don't get the narrative that I'm disrespecting Nadal. I just don't get it. I mean, there was no memorable Nadal matches. There were no good matches. He's amazing. He's tremendous. He's the greatest of all time on clay. There's arguments to be made that he's the greatest of all time. Obviously, there's arguments to be made on Federer's side too. This is not the time to get into that. I'm sure I will at some point. So that's that, I guess. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. I mean, I posted a preview video for the Federer and Kyrgios match, and someone commented, upset that I posted a video saying, where were the videos during the French Open? I posted 9 videos during the French Open. 9! And I was on vacation for the first week. What? Anyway, I see a lot of just irrational, and I think, here's, I guess, what I want to get to. I dropped my pen. One sec. I don't even need my pen. I don't even use this, but I always hold it. I don't know why. There are a lot of YouTubers out there that are open about, Federer bias, and that's fine. They have different styles. They're not me. They don't do what I do. They don't do their shows like I do. I don't really think anyone does their show like I do. People do their shows differently. For me, I'm not gonna do that. I'm gonna try to be objective if I can, as objective as possible. But I think that Nadal fans are conditioned to sort of maybe being, seeing their player getting disrespected on this platform, and then they just look for it. And then even when it's not there, they still think it's there. So that's kind of what I've experienced here. And then I just think, there's been ridiculous attacks in the comments of that video. I was reading ridiculous attacks on Federer and Nadal. And the reality of the whole situation is, the reality of the entire situation is that Federer and Nadal have incredible respect for one another. Throughout their career, it's really been largely a matter of surfaces when it comes to who's better than who. It's really come down to surfaces the majority of the time. They're both great champions, and they're both great friends, and they're both great ambassadors for the sport. So I don't know why their fans can't get along. I guess, maybe it's natural. Nadal and Federer fans are going to fight. Maybe it's not an awful thing. Maybe it's a good thing. But there's just ridiculous things being said. And normally I think my comment sections are really, really interesting. Really, a lot of really, really smart things being said. Whether that be constructive criticism of me, of players, of whatever. I don't know. The point is, normally I really enjoy reading through my comment sections, and last week that wasn't the case. I don't know why. I don't know what happened. Okay, so I'm going to move on. Let's talk about our top 5. The players most excited for the grass, okay? Here we go. This is kind of... I'm going to do a top 5 every week. I'm going to try to think of something every week. So here we go. Let's go. Number 5, Andy Murray. Murray, 2-time Wimbledon champion, returning after 11 months out of the game. So Murray's going to be very excited just in general, but certainly to see the grass. He said that he doesn't really have any expectations. He's got a tough first-round matchup against Kyrgios, although Murray, out of everyone in the Big Four, Murray does the best against Kyrgios. And also, by the way, playing Queens, he has 5 titles at Queens. Tremendous grass court player. Returns so well. I think that's the biggest part of it. The biggest part of Murray's grass court success is the return, which is so him and Djokovic were really a level above almost everyone else on grass, where so many players are used to getting free points. You play these guys, and all of a sudden you're in baseline rallies on grass. So Murray, number 5. Number 4, Milos Raonic. Raonic has obviously dealt with some injuries. He's ranked 31st in the world, and it was just sort of impossible for him to get that ranking up on the clay, which does not complement his style at all. He's had 6 hit. Probably the biggest win of his career is still that 2014 quarterfinal win against Roger Federer in, I just said in 2014. That's probably the biggest win of his career so far. So Raonic certainly very excited. Coming in at number 3, it's the man who will be playing Andy Murray, I believe, tomorrow, if not the next day. Nick Kyrgios. Kyrgios missed clay with an injury. His win also came in 2014. You'll see that's a theme on this list. Beating Nadal, this was really his introduction to the world in 2014, round of 16. Beat Rafa Nadal at Wimbledon. But Kyrgios comes in at number 3, mostly because he's been the most open about why he hates clay, and he has a hilarious reason. Probably the most Nick Kyrgios thing ever. Kyrgios said he doesn't like clay because it makes his shoes dirty. And I'll leave it at that. Number 2, Grigor Dimitrov had such a great finish to last year and had such high expectations coming into this season. This season so far has been a complete roller coaster. So it'll be nice for Dimitrov to get back to a surface he really enjoys and I think really helps his game, especially mixing it up on the backhand. He needs to serve well. It's always kind of a question mark with Dimitrov is how well he'll serve. On the grass, you can't be double faulting. You got to make first serves. But Dimitrov's game, I think, complemented by the grass. Also, 2014, his best result, he made the Wimbledon semis. Wimbledon 2014, that's the best I've ever done in racket bracket. I came in the top 100 that year because I predicted Raonic and Dimitrov, who were both, pretty young. I don't think either of them had ever made a major semifinal before. I predicted both of them to get into the semifinals, and it turned out that that's what happened. So that was my best finish. I think I finished like 43rd out of the, the 3,000 entries that are in racket bracket. So 2014, what a year. Number 1, Roger Federer. So this is kind of a no-brainer because he sat around for 3 months. He didn't sit around. He trained. He made sure his body was right. He rested. He was with Mirka and the twins. But if a guy's going to sit there and wait 3 months just for the grass, you're going to be number 1 on the top 5 most excited players for the grass. That's a no-brainer. Okay, let's take a quick peek just for our viewing pleasure of the draws next week for the Queen's Club. I don't know what is it called, the Fever Tree Championship now in London. Is that what it's called? Oh, okay. I didn't know that. Cilic on the top of the bracket, Dimitrov on the bottom. It's a pretty small draw. God, this is almost hard to read. I hope you guys can read this. Djokovic and Dimitrov could meet in the second round. Sam Querrey is a guy who you need to watch out for on the grass. He's very excited to see the grass, especially compared to the clay. Kevin Anderson will have his big serve to help him. Dan Wawrinka in the draw. We'll see where he's at. And then in Halle, you have Federer on the top of the draw, and you have Zverev on the other side. I think Zverev's forehand will probably be. I'll probably get into this at some point, but it'll probably be a lot better on the grass than it is on the clay. But Federer, of course, the favorite to win this. Let's see who else is in here. Anyone? Not as strong for some reason. Halle is not as strong. Gasquet coming off his title. Richard Gasquet, I heard someone call him. Who I won't get into it, but that's a good nickname for him, Gasquet. Let's see, anyone else? Coric plays Zverev in the first round, so that'll be a fun one. I'll make sure to take a look at that one. That's about it. So now that I've kept it on the screen for a little while, we've passed the 30-minute mark. Hope you enjoyed this one. Hopefully my personal diatribe about Nadal and Federer and respecting Nadal was not too bad to listen to. Hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you next time.